Okay, hi everybody. Today is Wednesday, March 31st, and this is the Kubernetes K8s Infra Working Group biweekly meeting at its new time, 8 p.m. GMT, whatever that comes out to locally for y'all. We're going to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct in this meeting. If you have any problems with the conduct in this meeting, please reach out to conduct@kubernetes.io, or I'm also happy to chat with you privately. I'm SpiffXP on GitHub and Slack and all the places. And this meeting is being publicly recorded, and hopefully it will automatically post to YouTube later. So let's see here. Let's see, the first thing on the agenda says welcome any new members or attendees. I feel like I haven't seen Christoph in a while, so welcome Christoph, and welcome Linus. Next up, we typically review the Data Studio report just to get a sense of how our building is going and if there's anything wildly unexpected. I don't have Tim here to sort of cross-check me against the actual GCP billing thing. But I feel like we've basically confirmed over time that the numbers match up. So now it's about any expected bumps or trends. And yeah, I don't know, just sort of roughly comparing this to what we looked at last time, it's about roughly the same spend rate. We're seeing less overall compute being used, which is probably because we had the run up to code freeze for V121 a couple of weeks ago, and now we're actually in code freeze, so there are less pre-submits happening. I don't particularly see anything unusual here. Is there anything folks want to drill down on at all?
I have a question about a specific page of the billing report.
Okay.
I think page 5.
All right. Go, GCP, go.
So about the K8 staging CI images, do we want to activate the vulnerability scanner for this project?
As far as I know, we have it activated for every staging project at the moment. The thinking was that we would allow staging project owners to see if the containers that they were producing were vulnerable at all, to help them sort of address those vulnerabilities there before going up to prod. Having said that, it is, I guess, kind of interesting that I don't see anything for the vulnerability scanner on K8s Artifacts prod.
Yeah, because I was curious about why we enabled the scanner of K8s on the staging project, but not on the artifact prod one.
So I feel like it would be worth opening up an issue. I know that I participated in the removal of there was like a vulnerability dashboard that was supposed to be showing sort of publicly what all of the vulnerabilities were for the various images hosted in, I think, k8s.gcr.io. And it was disabled for reasons that I am not privy to, but I believe it was something security related.
Okay.
I have some context, or it's not too much to add, but I remember I spoke with Just Augustus, or I guess Stephen Augustus, about that. And apparently he told, I guess it's a hearsay, but he told me that he turned it on for K8s Artifacts prod, but then got a ping from somebody else in the community saying maybe we should not have this on because I think it was publicly visible.
Yeah.
Like the dashboard and stuff. So
yeah.
Then they just briefly, just like kind of turned it off. And then I think the thinking was to decide how to surface that information to like a less public audience who can still act on that information. But I don't know what has happened to
that. Sure. Yeah. So that's why I'm suggesting maybe Arnaud would be great to open up an issue so we could follow up on this. Yeah, if it was about like removing public access, I could have done just that, but I was asked to remove like service accounts and a whole bunch of supporting infrastructure. So I think it's an open question whether we should have container vulnerability scanning enabled by default or not. I still feel like that's the vision. So having it enabled at least gives us a sense of what the resulting spend is. And then I guess sort of my only other question would be sort of confirming that K8s staging CI images actually has lifecycle enabled on it, and we're actually like deleting images there. If I remember correctly, we have an open issue somewhere about the fact that we don't actually have automatic expiration of images in our staging projects. We do for some of the buckets, but GCR by itself natively does not support auto removing images after a certain number of days. I think there are third-party tools out there that could do this for us. I may have even linked it in whatever the issue is. I don't have it handy right now. But yeah, thank you for raising that. And maybe everybody here already knows, but the reason you see so much compute for the Artifacts project is because that's the way that network egress is built. So it's not like we're spinning up a bunch of machines in the Artifacts project. Any other questions? Okay, cool. I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay. AI review. I did not do a good job of actually categorizing AIs last time. I know the big one was to schedule this new meeting. So thank you all for your patience in me figuring out how to calendar across multiple time zones. Yeah, the only other AIs I see are Mosh Loop showed up last time to talk about sort of expectations. What does it take to get us to 24/7 on call? And we'll follow up on that when we see more of a document. Okay, so the first two topics here are from Justin, who is unfortunately not present at this meeting. Can anybody speak to these, or should we just punt to next meeting?
I guess we should punt because also it was being worked by folks, I guess, from EP also. It's a question about the blob images, right? Do you have a context, Ryan? I guess it was Caleb and Hippie working on that, and Justin asking why we can't use just a redirection for the images.
Yeah, I legit am not as deeply involved in that document right now, so I certainly can't answer it. We'll punt those to next time. Justin's second item was about an alternate approach for managing AWS accounts, which I will follow up on that PR as I have time and bandwidth. Okay, next up, Claudio, you wanted to talk about creating a registry for private images to be used in some E2E tests.
Yeah, there are a couple of tests which require some registries to be private. Basically, they're also listed here in the test.tls images manifest.go. And you also have opened up an issue to migrate those images somewhere else in Kubernetes owned registries. So the idea is to have some new registry, and of course we can do that. It's not really a problem, but it has to be made private somehow, and I have no idea how that can be done. So that's currently my question at the moment. After that, I think we can actually use the same staging registry we already have for the other E2E test images to promote from that staging to the private authenticated E2E test images registry. And then basically we won't have to have different jobs for the same images. We can use the same jobs. So my question is, how do we make it private?
The way I would implement that is by probably updating the ensure staging storage script and adding some sort of special case block there to like make a private registry, or make one of the staging projects have a private registry instead of a public registry, something like that. The way we're standing up projects, we don't allow we only allow bucket level IAM policies instead of object level IAM policies, which means if we want a private registry, the whole bucket needs to be private. So to me, that would be a separate staging project just for private stuff. But like more specifically to dig into these, the two that I'm aware of are authenticated image pulling and K8s authenticated test. I really want somebody from the SIGs that own these tests to kind of speak to like, what is the purpose of these tests and are these necessary? I don't have the context in my head right now, but I feel like when I was looking at K8s authenticated test, for example, it was not clear to me that we were actually testing authentication or not.
So I looked at those tests. There are only 3 tests which are using private images. One of them explicitly tries to use a private registry using a docker.json file, which is then stored as a Kubernetes secret. Then basically you can spawn up a pod using a private image and specifying that Kubernetes secret, so that Docker.json file is being used to authenticate into the registry and pull that image.
Okay.
That kind of sounds like something we should cover anyways.
Yeah.
Sounds like something that Kubernetes should be able to do anyways. And the other 2 tests, basically they are the same scenario. It's for a replication controller and the other one for the replica set. Basically, it's trying to spin up an agnostic test web server pod and tries to run a couple of commands against it. For that, I'm not exactly sure we need it.
Yeah, that was sort of my thinking too. So
and also that those replication controller and replica set tests only run for GCE and GKE. There's some E2E skipper conditions there.
Yeah, and as I'm looking at one of the issues, somebody wanted a more recent version of Windows Nano Server in the authenticated image pulling project.
Yep, that's also one of the reasons why I'm asking.
I figured that might be why you're here. So I feel like a staging project that is specifically for private images sounds great. And then if you have the time to read through the existing set of scripts and functions and stuff inside of ensure staging script, you might be able to see how it sets up a GCR registry. I'm pretty sure what we could do is like make one as usual and then have a special case block sort of at the end that changes the registry to private, or like removes the all users binding.
That
So
sounds awesome.
this is the sort of thing that, yeah, it's a great time to be talking about it. I don't really anticipate us moving much on this until after 121 goes out the door. But yeah.
I mean, it's gonna take some time anyways, so yeah.
For sure.
If you could link me into the right direction for that,
sure,
that would be awesome. And I can then look into it.
Okay. Thank you for taking some notes, Linus. I appreciate it. I can't kind of walk and talk and type at the same time. Any other questions on that?
None from me. Yeah, no. Just actually one other thing. We are gonna need some authentication token, which we will then hard code into the test itself. How can we get that afterwards?
I'm honestly not sure off the top of my head. Yeah, let's iterate on that offline. I feel like it was something like somebody set up a service account and then copied out the key or something from that. So it might have to be something similar. Typically, I'm trying to get us to follow a policy if there's ever a secret that corresponds to, say, a service account key or something. We also try to keep it in Google Secret Manager so that we kind of have a backup there that's accessible to the right people if need be. Yeah, like part of my problem with these tests was I know there are a bunch of people who, when they're air gapping, when they're running in an air gapped environment, they need to like pull all the images down. And it's completely possible for them to pull the private image into a public repository, or like a repository that doesn't have any authentication, and the test will still pass. I guess I was.
That's a false positive in my. I would note that as a false positive in my opinion.
Yeah. So I guess I had also wondered if there was a way to sort of rewrite the test so that it explicitly, fails if it's pulling from a non-private registry. But anyway, we can talk about this in the issue.
Actually, we could add another check for that, but yeah, definitely, that's a good idea too.
So next up, Rianne, you wanted to update us on where you're at with the policy for data access?
Yes, we got through all the legalities with CNCF. They gave us the policy, the whole team signed. So the policy is done. We're still waiting for some contract information, which is not directly related, but the policy will be an addendum to that contract. So the policy, you did ask, Aaron, if we can see it. If you care, I can just drop you a message with the policy attached. It's a generic, don't do bad things with the policy document.
I would appreciate that. I mean, if CNCF is okay with it, I kind of feel like we should have that as a linkable document inside of our repo.
Good. I'll share it with you after the meeting. Then also specifically that they asked to mention that Google Legal also have the document. So it's been communicated. There's communication between CNCF Legal, Google Legal. So everybody's happy. Everybody's arranged. Okay. So I think on a legal level, I think we're good to go. All right. Then on a practical level, what would be the next steps for us to access the logs?
Making a Google group that is just for access to this specific set of data, and putting you and the people who have signed that agreement into that group. Yeah.
And you can assign access to the Google group?
Pardon?
And then you can assign access to that specific Google group?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I think,
Oh,
yeah. So if you can create a PR to make the group,
mhm.
and then it would be even cooler if you figured out if you could update. I don't know which script it is. I think it's like ensure prod storage or something. But if you can't, eventually when I get time to approve the creation of that group, I will then take that as the opportunity to look into enabling GCS access logs and then restricting access to those just to that group.
Okay.
Also, yeah, I also know in my backlog somewhere is to like create a playground type of project or sandbox type of project for y'all. I just haven't had the time to get there yet.
Yeah, no, I realized that sandbox thing is on my list for discussion after the code thaw for the next release. I do realize everybody's crazy busy at the moment. So the PR, I make that for you in the K8s Infra repo.
Yeah.
Good. I'll make the PR with all the people's names, and then we can chat about what else you want me to do.
Okay.
Good. Thanks, Aaron. That really helps, and it will move us forward in getting the log sorted.
Awesome. Arnaud, I'm going to hand over to you for the next item while I try to type up what I just said.
Okay, so basically, as you know, we are in the process of migrate Pro to the community infra, and I'm about to set up a staging instance from Pro. But before that, I need a GitHub token that will be used by Tide and basically all the component of Pro. And I need to decide, we need to decide from which account we need to take this token. Is it the current K8s CI robot, or do I need to create a new robot for that?
Definitely a new bot.
Okay.
The reason is that the GitHub rate limit applies to an account as a whole. So the situation we would not want to have happen is if you spin up a staging prow that's using the same account and then it starts draining tokens, and we kind of don't know why on the actual on prow.k8s.io. So that's why I like the idea of a separate account. And I'm glad Christoph is here to put on his GitHub management hat as well. It kind of felt to me like this is the sort of account we might want the GitHub management team to have the credentials for or be the owners for. Like it just wasn't clear to me whether I could say, hey, just create like a Google group, call it, like the K8s staging robot at Kubernetes.io, and then just add like the prow on call people in that group, and then say, okay, go set up a GitHub account with that email address. Or if we instead wanted to be like, it should be GitHub at Kubernetes.io. I don't know. Any thoughts?
The only thought that I had is like either way, we need to be explicit about who's in that group, because in addition to the email, we'd have to figure out how we handle two-factor on a new account and making sure that everybody is set up with the proper two-factor credentials to be able to log into that account if we need humans to actually log in and administer that account.
Oh, right.
Either way, it would need to be like an explicit group of people who is like comfortable and agreed to as far as owning and administering a shared GitHub account.
I can tell you the way things are done with the K8s CI robot account today. And maybe we can talk about what we want to improve on that. So today, that account is hooked up to, I think it might be a google.com address. it ends up getting forwarded to the set of people inside of Google who are on call, so that if something urgent happens, like they need to quickly kill off the old tokens and create new ones or something as part of their on-call duties, they can log in and do that. As far as logging in goes, for 2FA, I think they can just use one. I think we have like the one-time passcodes stored in our internal secret management system. And so somebody can use that if they are unable to get a hold of whomever has the 2FA app on their phone. I don't honestly know if there's a better way to share 2FA. So yeah.
Yeah, I know, well, depending on the scope and how big the group is and that kind of stuff, I know you could use you can register multiple U2F tokens against a single account. So you could have if everybody in that group has a YubiKey or some other U2F token, you could register that U2F. You can register multiple U2F tokens against an account. You can also use the same U2F token on multiple accounts. It's for example, I have a sock puppet GitHub account that I use for testing things, and I use my same YubiKey to log into both. And I have a main YubiKey, and I have a backup YubiKey that's stuffed in a vault in case I lose my main one. So there are some things that we could do around those physical tokens that would definitely be better than the one-time backup codes stored in a password manager. But having the one-time code stored in a password manager in a shared password manager probably also isn't a bad idea anyways if everybody loses their stuff. But that also, yeah, it's definitely not the fastest way to access things. Basically what I'm saying is I think there's something bad about the way that we're currently doing it with the current K8s CI robot account. But I think it ends up just coming down to however we do it. It just needs to be a group of people that all say yes, we accept being able to log into that account. Because that's the one thing that I could see us needing to do in an urgent basis would be if that GitHub account has privileges, like write privileges to a thing, if the token gets leaked, we need to be able to very rapidly revoke the current token.
Okay.
That's that I can see being the most urgent thing that we would have to do if even if the current prow was completely broken, the main prod prow, if it was broken for a few hours, it would be a big deal, but it wouldn't be an urgent deal. If the current prow token, which is an owner on everything, got leaked, that would be a much bigger deal, a much more urgent thing to deal with.
Okay, yeah, ideally it's the same group of people who are on call. But right now our on-call alias also includes some folks from scalability. It was kind of laziness on my part. It was I want to move to a future where the scalability projects are in a folder over here and the other prow projects are over here. So I don't know, to me it sounds like just maybe create a K8s Infra staging at Kubernetes.io group and add yourself to an Arno. You can add me, and we can figure out how to grow the group and get 2FA set up from there, and eventually converge to the point where the set of people who have access to that are the set of people who are on call for prow.
Potentially you could even nest the groups inside of Kubernetes.io. That you have a specific email that's set up for this specific bot, but then the people that have access to that Google group are the on-call group.
Yeah, that's eventually what I want to get to. So,
okay. So I don't need to add the GitHub admin right now.
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
If again, in that situation where, say, if we had a token that gets leaked and the first person on the scene is a GitHub admin could just literally kick the bot out of the org.
Yeah.
And then that limits the blast radius of any bad things that could be done with a leaked token.
Yeah.
I'm totally not saying this because we've done this ever in the past.
No, not at all.
Nope.
Yeah. This is I'm gonna save this for off camera. Yeah. Do you feel like you have enough to proceed on that or no?
Yeah, you owe me a token.
I owe you a token?
Yeah.
Okay, which token do I owe you?
For, I think it was Peribolo, the migration of Peribolo from Google to.
Oh boy. Oh
yeah. Okay, we are in the record, so we can talk about this later. But I have a question kind of related to this. It's about password managing for AAA. Can I, in the same time, set up secret manager to sync the password from the token from Google Secret Manager to AAA? Okay, good.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a big fan right now of just using Secret Manager to store, treating it like a password manager or whatever, just because we can use IAM, the control, to, via GitOps in an auditable way, show exactly who is allowed access to what.
Okay.
I will also just say out loud, the reason I have not been able to get you the token for Kate's GitHub robot is because I can't seem to find the password for it anywhere. And yeah, it's going to take me some time to track down the right people. So Kate's GitHub robot is not actually used for anything. Historically, it was the account that was used by Munch GitHub way back in the day.
Okay.
So, and the only cluster that has a token for it currently is the prow.kates.io cluster. So like I could get the token from there by asking on call very nicely, but it bugs me more that I don't know where the credentials are for that account. So I'd rather figure that out. Or we kick the account out and go make a new one, whatever. Yeah. So while we're talking about, setting up a staging account or setting up a different robot for the staging prow instance, Christoph, how comfortable are you with the idea of giving that staging bot the same level of access that the Kate CI robot has, owner for all the orgs and stuff? Or like, because we could be really careful and like give it owner access to
it depends on the
codes or whatever.
I guess it depends on the care that we give the code that's going to be behind that token. Like, what do we do with that token? If we are going to be equally as careful and cautious as we are with the current prow code and prow token, sure. If we are going to, if the hope is that we will be able to use having a prow staging instance as an opportunity to loosen kind of any gates around anything, then I would say probably not. We should probably restrict it
No, and I should be clear, I guess, the reason we're using the phrase staging here, Arno can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is like, we just want to get an instance of Prow up and running in K8s Infra and pretend like it is the production Prow instance. It's staging because it's kind of unclear exactly what dueling Prows are going to look like. And so we kind of want to be able to iterate on that with an actual Prow instance, if that makes sense. There is, based on conversations I've had, there's a belief that for the most part, as long as you don't have like two Prows trying to run two tides against the same repos, for example, then you're not going to get into a bot fight. But the idea is we would try to find a way to sort of migrate traffic over to this Prow instance, and eventually this would become prow.k8s.io. That's the plan. So not necessarily like an environment where we can play loose and fast before we roll things out to prow.k8s.io, but instead the soon-to-be prow.k8s.io for some definition of soon, depending on our bandwidth.
For that particular use case, again, the access level, I don't necessarily have a concern about.
Okay.
Like if we wanted to give it, the concerns that I would have would be, yeah, anything where it's going to be dueling, so based on like particular workloads and that kind of stuff, like whether even not like looking at if it's going to be running tests, is it going to be reporting back the results of those tests on a PR that also has tests running on the other Prow? Is Tide going to be consulting like both sets of test results because they're all reporting back in context? So we're going to have like two sets of context that Tide is going to be calculating based off of. It's also other workloads that we do with that, things like label sync and that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of like write actions. It'd probably be safer initially to not give it that access, because Prow doesn't necessarily need that access unless it's doing things like writing labels to a repo or writing contexts to PRs. So Prow can still check out and run tests on things without having write access. The write access to the owner access is a lazy way of giving write access to everything.
Yep. No, I understand. I do.
And the write access is mainly for things like label sync or writing context to PRs. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily need it right away. The other thing that I'd caution there, without getting into too much bike shedding, is I don't think staging is a great name for this as far as describing what it's doing. Because if somebody calls me, oh yeah, we're talking about the staging environment.
Okay.
Having like a side-by-side Prow that is going to be the new Prow in the end.
K8s Infra Prow?
That's not what screams out when I'm thinking about staging. So just from a intuitiveness standpoint, I'd maybe like suggest, I don't necessarily have a better suggestion at this exact moment, but something that is maybe a little bit more intuitive to what the end goal for this would be. But also, yeah, if we're just doing initial testing and that kind of stuff, it probably doesn't need owner access right off the bat until there's confidence and it's actually in a position where you're going to be flipping workloads. So if you're doing that like testing and then eventually making it safer, I'd say probably don't give it owner right away. Give it owner like admin or write over the repos that it needs to like do your initial, like you're rolling out and testing on like a repo by repo basis. And then eventually when it's like set to become the new one, then flip it over to owner.
Okay. How about K8s Infra Prow is the way we refer to this?
Sure.
Is that okay with you, Arno?
No problem.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not sure about the impact of the naming, but I'm fine with that.
Okay. Any other questions on this topic?
No, not for this meeting.
Okay. As usual, it's the sort of thing where like I look forward to whenever it is I free up enough bandwidth to help you sort of develop the plan. But I really appreciate you continuing to push forward on this. You're doing great. Thank you for the progress you've made thus far.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next thing on the agenda is also from you. It's about Terraform remote states.
I'm gonna be quick because we have Justin on the call, so I'm gonna leave you the time to speak about the two subjects. So basically, we have now 3 GK clusters running on the community infra, and those 3 clusters are managed by Terraform, which means we have Terraform states installed in the same GCS bucket.
Yeah.
So I would like to see these plates in different buckets because for security perspective, because we want to give the access for people like the on-call team to be able to manage the big cluster without manage the AAA cluster. Also, we want to add, basically, I want to add another bucket that we store basically all the Terraform resource related to monitoring, like basically the check time we can declare with Terraform, the dashboard you have created manually. You can use Terraform to push modification with a post summary job. So I would like some kind of consensus about this issue, but we don't have team in the call. So
yeah, that's cool. I posted a comment on the issue, which was sort of my proposal, and we can go bug Tim about that. But again, sort of I guess I have this vision of one day, instead of all of the projects having the organization directly as their parent, we start to think about splitting things into folders. And so like all of the projects that are related to Prow live in the Prow folder. And then all of the projects that are related to AAA or like the Kubernetes public project, whatever, sort of live in their own thing. And then we could sort of shard out ownership like that. And that's like whatever that organization scheme is what I would want for the buckets to store Terraform state as well.
Okay.
Given the use cases we have today, I was like, well, there are 2 clusters for Prow and then there's 1 cluster for AAA. So I'd make a bucket for Prow and a bucket for AAA. But we can, I'm happy, I'm happy to rearrange, however.
We don't necessarily need to have the same structure in GitHub as we have in basically Terraform. It can be 2 different things.
Yeah.
Okay. Ricardo, about your question, I don't think we want to use GitHub.
Yeah, actually, that's not inside the repo. GitLab have an HTTP endpoint for Terraform state that you can use as GitOps, and I was just wondering if GitHub folks, they aren't doing the same for a future release, instead of relying on storage, on object storage from Google or from Amazon. But that's just a...
I would say I don't know, but also I'm not sure we want to use GitHub to store basically Terraform state, because I'm not sure GitHub will make it free for us. So
I mean, They might. We have a pretty good relationship with GitHub. It has not come up in our ongoing calls with GitHub. They kind of try and tell us about features they think we might like, and we ask them for like things we would really like in return. Terraform specifically has not come up, but I agree with you, Arno. I feel like, again, right now, I really like using GCP IAM to control access to as much as possible, because it's really granular and we can do nesting and we can control exactly what level of access to exactly what resource. So I'm cool with continuing to use GCS as the place to store remote state for now.
Okay, so
to just plus one what Aaron said there, while I also think GCP is probably the best thing as far as my experiences with Terraform and Terraform State, our relationship with GitHub is excellent. And like, for example, right now, we have GitHub Enterprise on the Kubernetes org. Like, we have like the top tier of GitHub subscription on our org right now. So basically any tools that we want to use from GitHub, we can. We also beta test features for GitHub on a regular basis. So if either Git or other things, like we see a feature in GitHub that is something that we would like to use, or maybe the best tool for that particular job, we have access to it. Like, the money aspect with GitHub isn't really a thing that we need to worry about.
Okay. I think it's all for me now. We can leave Justin.
Yeah, that sounds good. Hey, Justin, we kicked, yeah, cool. Your things are back on the agenda. Go for it. Go nuts. Oh no, we can't hear you. You're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I got a bit confused over the time change, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
I had two quick ones. One of them, which was like, I see a lot of issues around easier, or like using registries to serve our images. And I was sort of wondering why we don't just use 302 redirects. I think the insight I feel like I had is that when we are serving, we are read-only and we don't need a registry. Like, we don't necessarily need all that complexity. So I was sort of wondering if there's a reason why we don't, sort of go with simpler HTTP only, read-only infrastructure rather than going for a registry. I don't know if anyone has any.
I guess I can answer part of this, Justin. It's sort of because how the imagery registry is implemented. So we cannot redirect. I've sent to you the issue, but like we don't have like an endpoint that has the manifest and an endpoint that has the blobs. Usually it's /v2 / the name of the image / something. So what Caleb, Tim, and the others, they are discussing is how to implement this into like an Nginx or an HA proxy or something like else. Because I was taking a look into Google Load Balancer, and it allows us to make redirections as well, but not using that sort of regex. So this is the problem. It's the name. One thing that I'm wondering if it's possible to do, and I want to make a test, is that instead of managing another infrastructure, like having another machine that can be a bottleneck or something like that, because it's going to have a lot of loads, even doing redirects, using Google Cloud Run or some function as a service that can like receive those like reg.k8s.io and just return the redirect that the user expects. But Tim is also discussing about how can we like balance between endpoints, balance between like GeoIP. But I guess we can make at least an attempt with some function as a service and not having another infrastructure to manage, another like redirector. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the as I understand it, the second redirect, the geo redirect will still be complex code. Like we can't just get that straight out of the box from GCLB. And so I was arguing that we should use the code we have to, or I'm lobbying that we should use the code we have to like do that, and we should host it ourselves rather than taking on management of another system which we don't know anything about. Like we all know about Kubernetes, we don't know anything about Cloud Run. And so I'm pretty sure we can beat Cloud Run, just like I'm pretty sure a Cloud Run expert could beat Kubernetes. So that would be my view. And I think actually if we mess up, I think GCLB has a fallback where we could just serve from a bucket or something. But anyway, I guess you've answered my question. I will follow up on the issue. Thank you for the context.
Sure. But I agree with you. We can also run that inside the Kubernetes cluster the AAA as well. It's just like, okay, can we do this different, the same way? That's only thinking. But yeah. There was another item from you, Justin, I guess.
You had another
Yes, I had another item, which is I put up a another attempt at the AWS account creation. This is basically based on the 2 observations from the last attempt, one of which is that Terraform, when managing accounts, becomes opaque. And people were like, what is this? Why are we doing this? And the answer is because Terraform. And so maybe the answer is not Terraform. And then the other problem was we have to get those credentials into Boscos. So essentially we are like doing a lot of work to like pass around stuff, and we could just upload them directly into Boscos and like have whoever it is that we trust to write and read the Boscos secrets be the person that actually creates these accounts, was sort of where I was going. And I think it came out fairly straightforward and fairly easy. People are welcome to have a look, but it also like can help us address some other rotation issues and things like that, which aren't necessarily easy to express in, I guess, a declarative way. So anyway, latest attempt at AWS account management with direct to Boscos integration, one source of truth. Boscos is truth.
I will look at it when I have time. That sounds awesome. Like conceptually, I have 0 objections. As the person,
I mean, it's bash again, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, like whatever. As the person who has written a healthy, if not the healthy is maybe the wrong word, the largest chunk of Terraform in this repo right now, I'm okay if we don't use Terraform.
Yeah, these are things that make it more justifiable are like that Terraform does badly on the like create an org and then impersonate into that org, which is why there were those hoops before. And secondly, that these are effectively ephemeral resources. Ideally, we'd create a new one every day or every hour or even every test. But in practice, like if we're going to like add a credential or something, we probably would take that opportunity to rotate credentials at the same time. We wouldn't necessarily go back into the other accounts and add them. We can do that. We just probably wouldn't. If you're going to touch it, you might as well rotate at the same time.
Okay, that sounds legit. For what it's worth, I don't know if you've talked with Jeff Grafton recently at all, but I feel like I forget if this is used much in the public Boscos, but there's the idea of something called Mason, I think, which can sort of dynamically construct resources. And so it could be that we could create sort of a Mason that like does automatically provision an AWS account per test. But I'm totally happy if we iterate our way towards that or decide that's just too much for what we want.
Yeah, if Mason is something I can plug into, I will happily convert this to what I assume is Go. But
maybe, I don't know. I mean, yeah, Boscos's janitor is still calling a Python script, for example. So
I will happily convert it to Python then.
Cool. That's basically our time. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
Christoph is back.
Yeah, Christoph, it's great to have you around again. I guess I'll just throw out there for what it's worth. Like, I apologize. I thought I was going to have a lot more time in the past 2 weeks to dedicate to this group, and I did not. This is not me promising that I will for the next 2 weeks, but I'll try. It was mostly like 121 test freeze. Took up a lot of my time as well as some internal stuff. And where I'm at right now is kind of trying to, the audit PRs are driving me nuts with the continually expanding list of SSH keys. So there are a few things that I'm trying to do to like close out the audit PRs and close out a lot of the follow-up like issues we encountered as we were reviewing the audit PRs. So I'm going to do that and try and connect with Arnaud on Prow over the next 2 weeks. So anyway, and I will,
last thing.
Yeah.
I would like for the next meeting, we dedicate a part of the next meeting for basically backlog triage, because we will be at the end of 121 and we should start 122 and maybe take half of the hour to doing a backlog triage.
that sounds awesome.
Okay.
I will try and start kicking stuff out or over as I go through issues this week. And then I will start writing everything in emoji. Because yeah, bash isn't enough. Really what I need is bash, but entirely in emoji. Okay, all right, I'm done. It was really great to see you all. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks or online.
See you, folks.
Thank
Happy
you.
Wednesday,
Cheers.
all.